Joining us on the best of here on WGR from our Greater Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame shows, there's a new award this year that's being handed out. It's called the Team of the Year. We talked about the award and the first team to be honored with John Boutet, board member, as well as former Buffalo Sabre and former Buffalo Bisons hockey player Mike Robitaille. John, it's Howard Simon. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Howard. How are you this morning?
Good. Thanks for hanging out with us. And we're also going to be welcoming to the show former Sabre and former Buffalo Bison Mike Robitaille. Stranger, how are you? Nice to hear from you again.
Well, it's good to be with you, Howard, just when you thought you were going to get rid of me, huh?
Yeah, you're stuck with me for another segment. That's pretty cool. So Roby, stand by because we're going to talk to John. John, before we get into who the team is, what is the Team of Distinction Award, since this is a brand new concept?
Well, Howard, in our 30-year history, we've predominantly celebrated individual accomplishments to get in our Hall of Fame. In the last few years, we've come to the realization that we're leaving out a large portion of Buffalo's great sports past by not recognizing the accomplishments of teams and franchises. So we started a new award to honor these teams with a Team of Distinction Award, and it will be awarded annually every year at our dinner. The teams that we're looking at or franchises that we're looking at could be high school teams, college teams, amateur teams, and even defunct professional teams like the Bisons.
So when you are sitting down and trying to figure out who to give the award to, what are the specific criteria that the committee will look at in this selection process?
Well, first and foremost, the committee was started by myself and Sean McCrossan, who runs our nominating committee. And we got together a couple of our board members who are passionate about this topic. And what we're looking for is obviously the first thing is a resume, a great resume of success in sports in Western New York. Team success, obviously, big portion of that. Possibly individual accomplishments inside that team is a big thing, too. So there's a lot of different factors, but, you know, the most important one is their resume, is what they have accomplished either in a season or in the Bisons' case, in their franchise history.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Mike here in a second about his time with the Bisons. How did the group end up selecting the Bisons for this initial award?
Well, we went through extensive research, Sean, myself, and the other board members throughout history to look at how teams have done in their past. We wanted a team that was known to most Western New Yorkers. We also wanted a team or franchise in this case that was special to a lot of people. And I think anybody that knows hockey and hockey history in Western New York realizes that the importance of the Bisons, not only with the Sabres and getting an NHL franchise here, but in their history of being inspirational to hockey in general. I mean, back in the 1920s when the Bisons were formed, hockey was not a big sport here in Buffalo. I mean, football and baseball were the predominant sports here. So the Bisons were really pioneers in starting hockey and starting a lot of kids off and playing hockey that ran up right through to today.
Mike Robitaille is with us. Of course, most of you, all of you, I'm sure remember, Mike played for the Sabres, but maybe some of you don't realize before that, when he was in the minors, he was playing for the Buffalo Bisons. So, Mike, when you joined the Bisons, what time frame era are we talking about, and who were they affiliated with at the time you were on them?
Well, over the decades, I mean, they were affiliated, this team, with the Montreal Canadiens. Some great players like Jacques Plante, as an example, played here. Then the Chicago Blackhawks had their foreign team here in Buffalo. And, of course, they had their junior team up in St. Catharines. So, you know, it was just a beautiful introduction for the young guys. Just go down the road and then play pro hockey in the American Hockey League. And then finally the Rangers took over, and they had a team in Omaha where all the younger up-and-coming stars were playing at a junior. And then they had, of course, the Buffalo Bisons, the more sedate, older, accomplished group of players. And that's how it set up. At the end of the year in Omaha, I was supposed to go to New York. They got beat out by Montreal, and so they would send me here to Buffalo, and I'd play for the Bisons for a couple of years in a row in the playoffs, along with players like Sil Apps and Jim Kurlicki and some really up-and-coming stars. So it was pretty exciting. I'll tell you what, it felt like the NHL in those days.
Yeah, John, John mentioned when they first were formed, maybe hockey wasn't so big. By the time you got here and started playing for the Bisons downtown, what were the crowds like?
It varied. Of course, the building wasn't as big. They ended up raising the roof up. Dave Borman led that work with the Sabres. But in the playoffs, you'd get around 8,000 people. Normally at a game, 4,000 or 5,000. But a dedicated group and really intense. Those games, remember, they were around for decades, so they had just a hate for some of the players. And they had expressed themselves so profoundly in these games. It was just wild. And then the crazy thing about it, Howard, was you really got to meet the players and the fans because they would line up on each side where you go off the ice and you had to walk through the crowd to get into the dressing room. So there are more fights there than probably on the ice. Just with fans and players from opposing teams.
See, it's funny. I was going to ask you, okay, as an outsider, I wasn't here watching the games. In my head, I'm envisioning Slapshot, which was a parody of minor league hockey at the time. I assume it wasn't that bad, but what was the level of play in the American League when you were there?
Oh, my God. Are you kidding? It was some of those teams were so good. The American League would beat the new franchises in the NHL in their first couple of years. Without any problems at all. I mean, I'll tell you were in New York at the time. You were just a kid, but I'll tell you the type of players that went through here to start their careers off. Walter Tkachuk, you remember him,
yes,
of course.
Sure.
Brad Park.
Yep.
Phil Apps played some time here, and it's just some really, really big names that ended up playing a significant role in the National Hockey League. And it was just it was a lovely way to break in and learn how to play the game. You're playing with older players that were experienced. They're all making probably between $8,000 to $15,000 a year, and that was it. It was a different world altogether. I mean, you traveled on a bus. You'd play a game, get on the bus, travel 5, 6, 8 hours to the next arena, the next town, get off, go to sleep, play the game, get in the bus for another 7 or 8 hours, and then cash your check in at the end of the year for maybe $1,000 bonus. I mean, that's just the way it was. And I learned how to play in those days. I mean, guys like Ron Ingram and Bob Blackburn, and, of course, Gilles Villemure was a goaltender. Guy Trottier was a 50-goal scorer. That's where I learned how to play with these old, experienced players that settled me down and taught me angles and when to go and when not to go. So the whole thing was a great experience, and it was not like Slapshot at all. It was certainly in certain nights, but it was really good hockey and just one tiny step away from the National Hockey League.
Hey, John, you mentioned the new Team of Distinction Award is going to be given out on an annual basis. So in terms of the committee, do you guys come up with nominations? Can people nominate teams themselves and send those nominations to the board or to the website?
That maybe that have fallen through the cracks through time. We've developed a working list of about 35 to 40 teams and franchises that we're working with right now. But absolutely, if someone has a team from the past that they know fits our criteria, that would fit in our Hall of Fame, please send that to our website. We have a website, GBSHOF.com. There's a link there where you can communicate with us. We would absolutely love to hear. We heard from some people already about some high school teams, a golf team that hadn't lost in about 9 years. Wow. We have obviously the Sweet Home Volleyball program,
Sally Kuss,
the 80s and 90s, that won multiple New York State championships. So we have a really good working list, but we are sure that there's so many out there that we don't know about. So please contact us if you do have someone that you think would fit in.
You know, you're going to have to go back about 30 years or so to research the old Buffalo baseball teams.
Yeah, and the great thing is with technology now, with to be able to Google things and look back at newspapers from all the way back in time. Ron Carr, our board member who runs our Pride Committee, our deceased committee, has done a fantastic job going all the way back to the 1800s. Researching through newspapers, so it's out there. I mean, we can actually go back and look at teams from way back when. So, yeah, please contact us if you have anybody.
Hey, Mike, from your playing days in the Bisons, do you have a favorite memory, whether it was a specific team, teammates, coaches, big games, anything that you really always stands out when you think back about your Bisons days?
Well, at that age, Howard, everything seemed bigger than it was. I mean, I was in such awe even then, playing with these old veteran players that, played many years in the National Hockey League, and then they were just finishing their career up in the American Hockey League. So, I remember we won the championship here, beating Springfield out, and the feeling of being with those guys. And I was kind of an outsider. I only played about maybe 10 games in the playoffs, but just to watch and be part of that group and what it meant to them, and to see them just to pull that together all season long, that in itself is a great, great thrill. And, how about having a coach like Fred Sherrill, the guy that's in the Hall of Fame, one of the greatest coaches that ever lived. And the memories I have of Fred are just so profound. I mean, it was such a starting point for a young player like myself, and to have that opportunity to learn and listen and watch. So every day I came in, honestly, Howard, it's just my mouth was open. I just sat there and it was quiet, and I just watched. And, since I was a little kid in a lot of cases, I was all of a sudden playing with these players, and it was just a thrill of a lifetime. The one thing that really leaves me perplexed is why they don't play a bigger role in the history of hockey here in Buffalo. What a beautiful entree into an NHL franchise. All these new NHL franchises, they all had a great history of hockey, and especially in the American Hockey League. I mean, they had a built-in car waiting, set to go with the history of the Bisons here, and they just moved forward, and it really opened up a lot of doors, I think, for Buffalo getting a franchise. So they just played a minor role, and I don't think they should. I think they played a big role. There's a lot of people that said, listen, without that foundation of the Buffalo Bisons, they might not even got a team in the National Hockey League. It was that important.
Well, Mike, listen, it was nice catching up to you again, and thanks for coming on the show, and I hope you and the family are all doing well.
We're all doing well. Good talking to everyone.
Stay safe, Mike. And John, thank you for coming on as well, and congratulations on the award selection this year, and good luck with the process in the future.
Thank you, Howard. And again, thank you so much for doing this over the last 4 weeks. You've been fantastic, and we've gotten some great positive feedback out of our show. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. You have a nice weekend. When we get back, there's a new individual award as well, honoring the late, great Dick Gallagher. We'll talk about that with board member Paul Stasiak when we continue on WGR.